Well, hello everybody, and welcome to my channel. This is Misty Dawn, and I thought that today we would kind of talk about, or I guess I would talk about my trigeminal neuralgia diagnosis. I will just kind of talk about the diagnosis and the very beginning of it because it's a really long story. It goes back quite a few years, a couple decades, or yeah, I guess a decade at least. No, a couple decades. Um, and the reason this kind of sparked was, well, I'm sure a lot of you are curious if you watch any of my videos at all, especially my vlogs. I complain a lot about some of the conditions I have, and one of them is trigeminal neuralgia. And I haven't really talked about the diagnosis or really what it is or what it causes. I think maybe a little bit about some of the pain and what it causes, but you know, um, I have been hoping that other folks with trigeminal neuralgia, and I could get together and have some conversations. And I've attended a recent support group, which really was a great experience. And I was going to talk about that in and of itself at some point, but I thought, I really need to start from the beginning for my viewers, especially those who are coming because of a lot of the chronic pain and chronic issues that I have, and seeing whether or not this is the right space for them. Because not all conditions are the same, not all pain is the same, and frustrations and etc. I mean, we all have one common, thing, and that is, it really disrupts your life. But anyway, so enough about that. Let me just kind of start from the beginning, and we'll see how far it goes. I don't have that much memory on my phone, so I can only do snippets about, at the most 30 minutes or so. And I really don't think anybody wants to sit more, through a longer video than that. Well, some people have a lot more patience than I do. Let me just put it that way. Sitting and listening for about a full hour on health is too much for me anyway. So I'm going to try to, maybe go to 25 at the most. Because, I guess I'm a talker. I'm a chatty person. I didn't realize that. But the more I start making these videos, I think I'm only going to be 5-10 minutes. Next thing I look up and it's 20. And I'm like, oh. So let me tell you how my symptoms started, some of at the very beginning, and kind of go from there. I did go run out into my car and get my tripod. The tripod, however, is one of those that attaches to a table because I was planning on doing a lot of tutorials while I was here in Austin on an exploratory mission. I tried this on the table and the kitchen, whatever it is over there, counter, and none of the light was bad, or all the light was bad, and it was just a mess, and it wasn't even good light. So I'm over here where I constantly film while I'm here. So this is stuck on the couch. So you may get wobbled around a little bit, but I'm going to see how this works. Okay. Let's start from the beginning. So I'm 54. This is 2023. And I'm trying to remember the year that this started, but it was back in, I'm trying to remember. I think it was almost in the 2000 is where I'm thinking, 2000, 2001. So yeah, a couple decades ago, I started experiencing what I thought was a toothache, or I was getting a cavity. And I didn't have insurance at the time, and I, had a really busy, stressful life. Of course, when haven't I had a busy, stressful life? Right now, actually, it's much less. But I just was experiencing something going on my right side in my teeth somewhere, and I couldn't quite pinpoint where it was. I mean, I knew there was a couple teeth on the top, I think it was. And I thought, I'll go to the dentist. I'll pay for it. So I hadn't had my teeth cleaned for a while, and so I go into the dentist. They take x-rays, which were brutally expensive, by the way. I remember at the time. I went in, had to x-rays, they looked at my teeth, they looked at my gums, they looked at everything, and they're like, I don't see a cavity, and I don't even see a cavity forming. You got great teeth. I mean, are you sure? Because I'm feeling, this toothache. Which one is it? And so I got frustrated. No, nothing. I don't even know if I had my teeth cleaned because I couldn't afford it at that point. I don't remember. Um, so I'm like, okay, well that's good to know. I'll just, So they told me take some ibuprofen and you'll be fine, or whatever it was, Tylenol. So I don't know how much time passed, but it still bothered me. And then I started getting a little achy in the jaw. So went to completely different dentist and complained to them. and they and I said, look, I'm not paying for X-rays. They've already taken X-rays, so they got X-rays from that dentist. And then they even went ahead and says, well, I'm not going to charge you. Let me just take my own X-rays as well. They looked around at everything, looked at my mouth, same kind of thing, and said the exact same thing. You have perfect teeth. They're fine. No cracks, no cavity. We don't see anything wrong with your jaw. And so there was that. So I don't know how much time had passed before, it just kept persisting and getting worse. And it really pissed me off. So I went to the doctor, and they didn't have anything to say to me either. They just thought, maybe you're grinding your teeth. Did the dentists talk to you about, some teeth grinding, or, because they didn't have the tools I don't have the tools as a doctor to get all up in there, but, they did the best they could. And then they kind of just checked my jaw, and, we know with all the hours that you're working, and, maybe you're grinding your teeth at night. And I says, no, they didn't really say anything about any problems with grinding, and, TMJ, those are the type of things that my doctor was saying. So I went again to another dentist, someone that was even more expensive, someone who really had more of a specialty with jaw. Again, went through the same thing, x-rays and poking and prodding and looking at everything, feeling the joint, and the gentleman really didn't discount anything that I had to say, but like the other two dentists had. But he says, well, I don't really see any evidence of you grinding your teeth. Maybe you're clenching, maybe you're grinding a little bit because of stress or something's going on at night. So what I would suggest you do is wear night guard. And he said, if you don't have insurance, and which at the time I still didn't. And so, go out and get you, this kind of a mouth guard and do all this. And he kind of taught me how to mold it to my teeth. Start sleeping with that at night. Maybe that'll help. All I can suggest is just analgesics and pain meds, over-the-counter pain meds. But it looks great. And I don't see any wear and tear in the teeth, blah, 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 blah. I went ahead and let him clean my teeth. Then, I went and got the mouth guard, had it molded, I did all that. So then on for, gosh, I'm trying to remember how many years after that. I don't think really that many years passed. I think it was probably only a year or so that I just kept being in pain. But it was minor, and it came and went, and but when it did happen, it wasn't all that wonderful. And the best way to describe it is a toothache. Sometimes my jaw would ache, or my teeth would ache. Sometimes, but the pain was mainly kind of like a, in the teeth. It was kind of a little achy, or like I had stress, there was a stress fracture or something on the tooth, or I cracked it, but I've never had a cavity, so I couldn't really tell you. Well, no, I have too had a cavity. I guess I don't even know if I could explain what it feels like to have a cavity, though, because the cavity was so minor, it never got to the point to where it hurt. I had it fixed before it went very deep. So all I can tell you is if I had a bad cavity, that's how I would assume that it would feel. It definitely was inside the tooth. It would kind of be a flash of pain. I don't know, have you ever just kind of chomped on something the wrong way, like maybe a popcorn kernel that got stuck and and you chomped on it really hard and it just kind of sent some radiating pain. Have you ever had something like that happen? That's kind of what it was, because it would radiate a little bit, and it was jolting and kind of quick, and then and there were different kinds of degree of pain. Some of it was pretty harsh at different times, to where it would cause you to like that a little bit, and then other times it was just, but it was just a constant bug, a constant thorn in my side. And it didn't hurt 24/7. It just, would come and go, and some days were better than others, and I could just never figure out what it was. I got gotten a new job, and I had some really good benefits, some good medical benefits, and um, had my teeth, constantly taken care of, and I was constantly looking at this issue. And by the way, the pain didn't get any better with my mouth guard. In fact, my mouth guard just drove me nuts. I couldn't tell, excuse me, from the mouth guard wearing it at night. I couldn't tell that I was really grinding my teeth. And the dentist that I ended up going to when I had benefits, this is now, I don't know, 2003, 4, something like that. He didn't see any wear and tear. He didn't see any problems. Didn't see any problems with my jaw. So it's something I just kept having a problem with. And I think at the end of my entire the 23, 4 years, I went through 5, 6 different dentists, oral surgeons, because I did go to a couple of oral surgeons to talk to, went through several doctors, and it's just something I dealt with and was not a pleasant thing. And I dealt with this from 2000 and clear until 2004, 5, something like that. So a good 5 years. Things started to change in my pain really abruptly, and it was really odd. I was at work. I was standing in the doorway talking to my supervisor about a project, and I'm so glad I was in the doorway. And this pain out of nowhere, this like burn, cinching, it was like electric shock and then burn. But it was like I had put my finger in a light socket, but it only happened in my mouth, like right here in this area. And it was in my tooth, it was on the side of my nose, it was right here. And it put me to my knees because it was such a shock. It was so out of nowhere, and abruptly. It lasted for just a few, like less than a second, the initial shock. And I say shock because that's the best way to describe it. It was like an electrical shock. Like I said, somebody was electrocuting this side of my face. And then it did radiate out with some like sparks and into the rest of my face right here. It didn't go up this way. It basically just went back this way. It didn't go down. It just back this way. And I'm like, oh my gosh, and it shocked me so much from both the pain and also the shock of it just happening. My mind didn't know what to do, that it literally almost got me to my knees. Like I lost my balance and I had to hold on to the door frame, and my supervisor got up right away. He came over and like, are you okay? And he kind of grabbed my arm so I wouldn't fall. And I'm like, I don't know what just happened to me. And I explained to him kind of what it was, and he's like, that's just bizarre. And I told him that, I've been having for years and years a certain type of a tooth pain that nobody can really figure out. And so he was the one that suggested to go to a neurologist. And he says, it sounds like maybe you might need to talk to a neurologist. Because if it has anything to do with your nervous system or whatever, and it's attached to the brain, then, maybe the neurologist could at least help put you in the right direction. So that's what I did. I made an appointment with a neurologist, and I think this was, I don't know what year it was. It was, but I think we might be to 2000, I think 2006, 7 at this point. But I went to the neurologist and sat down and had a long conversation with her. And she wanted me to have an MRI done. So she set that up. And she told me when I went to the initial visit before my MRI. I think she told me what she thought that it was. Because by the time I had gone to her, not only had I had that, I think I had had a couple other attacks. But the one I had at work was definitely the worst. I mean, it was, and maybe it was because, like I said, it could have been just shock on top of shock, the physical pain as well as the shock of it happening. But I don't remember I don't remember now if I'd had any more before I went to the neurologist. But I went to the neurologist. And so she told me, she says, I think you have what we call trigeminal neuralgia. And she says it's quite rare, and particularly it's rare in people as young as you, because, this is in my 30s. And she says it usually happens to women. It usually happens to people that are much older. It's usually because of an accident or a major trauma in the face, like a motorcycle accident, or if you've been through an assault of some sort. And so she kept asking me all these different questions about, had I been in a car accident, or had anything ever happened as far as trauma on my face? Had I been hit there? Which, I have had trauma in my life, physical trauma in my life, but not on that side of my face. Well, not on my face in general. So, anyway, I didn't know what that was, and she did tell me. She says it's a tough condition. She called it a condition. She didn't call it a disease. She says, unfortunately, there is no cure. And she said, but let's get an MRI, because there could be, a little tumor or something that we could really easily remove, that's maybe putting pressure on your nerves. So when she said trigeminal, what she was explaining to me is there's different nerves in your face on both sides. And they call it trigeminal because there's 3 different major branches. I'm going to touch this side of my face because my trigeminal neuralgia is on my right side. So it doesn't bother me to touch this side of my face. Right now I'm feeling a little, weird here, so I don't want to touch it. So there's 3 branches of nerves, that are on this side of the face, and so you've got, one down here, here, and here, and I've already forgotten the names. I keep looking them up to memorize them, but I'll be darned if I can remember. And she says, it sounds to me like you just had, like, one of your branches is really affected. And, basically what trigeminal neuralgia is, your nerves are vibrating really, really quickly, and you can't control the vibration of those nerves, and it's basically sending a signal up to your brain that pain, trauma, whatever, and you end up with this shocking feeling. And she says it sounds very much, and it feels to so many people very much like I had described, like the shock, the electrical shock, the pain, burning sensation. She says it's excruciating, and it can be excruciating, and I said, yeah, I mean, a couple incidences that I had at that point that were really bad. I couldn't imagine it getting, much more painful. So she says, but there's some medication we can try, and there's a variety of other things we can't. But and so she immediately put me on a Parkinson's medication at the time, and which was carbamazepine is the generic name. I'll be darned if I can remember the brand name right now. But carbamazepine, and so I got put on that, and I went and had my MRI, which was a joy. Ugh, I hated it, and because I say that sarcastically, I'm not claustrophobic, and good thing I'm not, but it's still not a pleasant experience. It's like, I was in there for 30 minutes. I had to have contrast, which meant I needed an IV, and then they put in. No, I take that back. Well, I don't know if I had contrast. Yes, I did. I had to think for a minute. I did have contrast, and I'll tell you why here in a minute. So I had that done. So then I get a call saying, we've got the results. I'm going to see you back in. Well, can't you tell me, all that whole, no, I want to talk to you. So I brought my daughter with me, my middle daughter, and as support, because I was really nervous and I was kind of freaking out. But I was hoping that they found something, because I just, like, oh, let's just, surgery, I can handle surgery. Hey, Doodle, I can handle surgery. So I went in to talk to her. And I will have to say that this woman, I did not care for. I didn't care for this doctor. I didn't stay with her for very long. And I didn't like the way that she told me what was going on either. She wasn't, I don't know, she was just odd. She says, well, I first want to tell you, we didn't really find anything on your nerves. We couldn't tell that they were damaged. We couldn't tell that there weren't any tumors on them anywhere. It really wasn't anything that surgically they could fix and go in and you would be fine. She said, so what I want you to do is stay on your medication. It takes a while for the medication. It took, according to what I was told, and I played around with it a little bit later and found out it was sort of true, sort of not. But it was a medication you kind of need to build up and keep in your system. And then if, you stop taking it, it took a while to get off of it. But, it was a brutal medication. A lot of these epileptic, well, they're not but they're epileptic or Parkinson's type drugs. They got a lot of side effects. They're pretty brutal to your internal organs, and the side effects are kind of gross. Side effects like really feeling mentally foggy and it kind of messing with your cognitive level or just memory, and you just kind of feel gross mentally on them. You can get dry mouth and nausea and I don't know, a variety of other things, and dizziness. Really what bothered me the most was cognitively. I just really had this kind of fog. And there were other things, there were a long list. You can look it up. But I got on those, and I could really tell right away that there just kind of was a heaviness when I started taking it. And but it seemed to work. But in the same, I guess this is a little harder to remember and talk about. But in the exact same appointment, she says, but I want to talk about something else. And I'm like, okay. And she comes up close to me. I'm sitting up on the bed thing, whatever, the exam table. And she's on her little wheelie thing. She comes up and she puts her hands on my knees, which I think she should put them on both knees. I don't know. That was what always made me uncomfortable. But just because you're a woman doesn't mean that you should come over and touch me. But anyway, and it was just, she was always just really in my face all the time. It was kind of weird. She says, we found a tumor on your brain. And it was on this side. It was on the left side of my face. And at the time, they called it a cholesteatoma. But what they were really concerned about, and also puzzled by, is that it wasn't in the part of the brain that a cholesteatoma is usually found. The cholesteatoma is usually associated in the back by the hearing, back here, and it's usually over here. Mine was clear in the middle of the brain by the mescla cave, and very difficult place to go in and operate if inoperable. They didn't know. So she referred me to a neurosurgeon. And she told me, she said there was really no way to know how long it had been there. And I said, well, there should be, because I had an MRI done when I was pregnant with my last daughter, because I had severe migraines when I was pregnant. I had a lot of health issues when I was pregnant with her. And that so, and it was with Kaiser, and here I am with Kaiser again. So you should be able to look and find that film somewhere and compare it, because it definitely wasn't there when I had my MRI with her. So they're like, okay, well then they were kind of figuring out the years so it had to have been rather, recent. I'm trying to think of how old my daughter was at the time that I was diagnosed, but I don't remember. I'd have to do the math and look at all the years and everything. But it devastated me. It was scary, and I remember crying all the way from leaving her office to the car to the point to where I didn't know if I could drive. And my daughter learned to drive by then. I think she was, I don't even remember how old she was. But then again, I had a hard time with my teenagers driving me around. Anyway, so she could have been 16, 17, 18 for all I know. But oh sure, she must have been in college because I was at a particular job that I stayed at for many, many years. Anyway, I just was devastated. I was crying, and it was something that was just really hard to take because you don't know whether this tumor was gonna grow. So you were gonna have to now track it, and so I did make an appointment with that neurosurgeon, and I'll talk about that in another video because we're already at 26 minutes. But that was how I got diagnosed. It was years and years and years of research trying to find out what it was. We had the internet at the time. I was researching because of school and my job. I was at a good research job at the time, and so I knew how to research, and I did the best I could to try to see if I could figure out. But this was also a rare condition. There wasn't anything I could find on the internet, even after I got diagnosed and had a name for it. Couldn't even find. The only thing I could find was, at the time, I think it was WebMD was it available back then, or maybe it was the Mayo Clinic or something that I had run into with a definition. And basically, they had coined it the suicide disease because it was the suicide rate of people that had it were extremely high because it was considered the worst pain that a human being could feel, that any human being would feel, burning to death and heart attacks, all these giving birth, all these different pains, I guess. I don't know how they really determine that. I don't know how in the hell does someone determine that that's the worst pain a human being can experience? I don't know. That's kind of an interesting thing. But anyway, it was deemed the suicide disease. Well, that wasn't something that somebody who had just been diagnosed with wanted to hear about. There was no cure. More than likely, it was going to get worse as I got older. I know the doctor was very worried, was concerned about it mainly because I was so young and because it always progresses. Yes, you could go into remission. There were people, but there was never any rhyme or reason of they didn't know what caused it. They didn't know what affected it better or worse. Stress didn't seem to have. Of course, I always think stress has an effect on everything. I still do. And I'm sure sleep and everything else, all these different things probably have some sort of an effect on it. But what they were saying is that they weren't the major causes of it, or, so there wasn't a cycle to the pain or a cycle to the attacks. Sometimes, and for me, I began to learn that they came in threes, so I could at least prepare for it. And I did, at the very beginning, really pay attention to when they came and what happened, how long they lasted. I started keeping kind of a diary because I really wanted to start to understand it. And as a scientist or a researcher or whatever you wanted to call me at the time, I wasn't a scientist, but I really felt like I had that analyst scientific background to where I wanted to do stats on myself. So that's kind of where we were. So in the next little chit chat about this, I'll talk about my neurosurgeon visit. I'll talk about my progression of TN from there and the cholesteatoma, and we'll spend another 30 minutes talking about it. All right. So thank you all for coming and spending a little time with me today. For all of you who, or any of you who experience any facial pain, trigeminal neuralgia in particular, and want to tell your story, or if you have any questions for me, or if any of you have any questions for me about this condition, please, use the comment section.